Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in today. Today we're going to be reading Summer Night, and it's book 4 of the Dresden Files. We'll be joined by Lindsay. She's not feeling good today, so she had to stay home from school. So let's go ahead, and today what we're doing is we are on chapter 15. Chapter 15 is not quite... Actually, it might be the halfway. Nope, not quite. 34 chapters in this one. So, we're going to be reading chapter 15 today. If you've missed the other chapters or missed the other sections, please do look in the playlists below. Let me go ahead and kind of shift her crackers around here. And here we get going. You ready, Lindsay? You want me to cut another deal with the she? I said. I didn't bother to hide my disbelief. When I burst out laughing at you, do you think you'll be offended? And why should you find the notion amusing? I rolled my eyes. Christ, lady, that's what's got me into this crap to begin with. Mauve's lips slithered into a quiet smile, and she left her hand extended toward the seat beside her. Remember, wizard, that you came to seek something from me. Surely it would not harm you to listen to my offer. I've heard that before, usually right before I get screwed. Mauve touched the tip of her tongue to her lips. One thing at a time, Mr. Dresden. I snorted. Suppose I don't want to listen. Something in her eyes suddenly made her face cold and unpleasant. I think it might be wise for you to indulge me. I simply go mad when someone ruins a good party mood. Harry, Billy muttered, these people are giving me the creeps. If she's playing games with you, maybe we should go. I grimaced. Yeah, that would be the smart thing. But it wouldn't get me my answers. Come on. I stepped forward and started climbing up the table Mauve had indicated. Billy followed closely. Mauve watched me the whole time, her eyes sparkling. There, she said once I'd been seated. Not so untamable as he claimed. I felt my jaw get a little tighter as Billy took a seat beside me. A trio of brightly colored lights zipped in, bearing a silver tray holding a crystalline ear of water and 2 glasses. Has who said? Mav waved a hand airily. No matter. I glared at her, and she didn't seem bothered. All right, lady, I said. Talk. Mav idly stretched out a hand. A goblet of some golden liquid appeared in her fingers and rimmed over with frost as I watched. She took a sip of the drink, whatever it was, and then said, First, I will name my price. There'd better be a blue light special. I don't have much to trade, all things considered. True, I cannot ask for claim over you, because Queen Mab has that already. But let me see, she tapped, a fingernail on her lips again, and then said, Your issue. Eh? I said gibbily. Your issue, wizard, she said, toying with a violet dreadlock. Your offspring, your firstborn. In exchange, I will give you the knowledge you seek. Newsflash, Goldilocks, I don't have any children. Mav laughed. Naturally not, but the details could be arranged. Evidently, that was a cue. The dark pool of maybe water stirred, drawing my eye. Ripples whispered as they lapped at the edges of the pool. What's that? Billy whispered to me. The waters parted, and a she-girl rose out of the pool. She was tall, slender, water sliding down her pale, naked, supple curves. Her hair was a deep shade of emerald green, and as she kept on coming up out of the water, walking up what were apparently submerged stairs, I could tell that it wasn't dyed. Her face was sweetly angelic, sort of girl next door pretty. Her hair clung to her head, her throat, her shoulders, as did beads of water that glistened and threw back the fey lights in dozens of colors. She extended her arms, and immediately half a dozen little light pixies zipped out of nowhere, bearing a swath of emerald silk. They draped it over her extended arms, but the cloth served to emphasize rather than conceal her nakedness. She looked up at the tables with a feline fey eyes and inclined her head to Mav. Then she focused upon me. There was an abrupt pulling sensation. Something as simple as a difficult to resist as gravity. I felt a sudden urge to get up and go down to her, to remove the silk cloth and carry her into the water. I wanted to see her hair fan out beneath the surface, feel her naked limbs sliding around me. I wanted to feel that slender waist beneath my hands, twist and writhe with her in the warm, weightless darkness of the pool. Beside me, Billy gulped. Is it just me, or is it getting a little warm in here? She's pushing it on you, I said quietly. My lips felt a little numb. It's glamour. It isn't real. Okay, Billy said without conviction. It isn't real. He reached for a glass and the air of water, but I grabbed his hand. No food, no drink. It's dangerous. Billy cleared his throat and settled back into his seat. Oh, right. Sorry. The girl glided up the tiers of tables, glittering pixies and darting attendants around her, gathering her hair back with ornate combs, fastening gleaming jewels to her ears, lacing more about her throat, wrist, ankle. I couldn't help but follow the motion of the lights, which took my eyes to the thorough tour of her body. The urge to go to her became even stronger as she neared. As I smelled her perfume, a scent like that of the mist hovering over a still lake beneath a harvest moon. The green-haired woman smiled, lips closed, and then drew up in a deep curtsy to Mav and murmured, "My lady." Mav reached out and took her hand warmly. "Jen," she murmured, "are you acquainted with the infamous Harry Dresden?" Jen smiled, and her teeth gleamed beneath her lips. They were as green as seaweed, spinach, of fresh steamed broccoli, only by reputation. She turned to me and extended her hand, arching one verdant blow. I gave Billy a self-conscious glance and rose to take this she-lady's hand. I nudged Billy's foot with mine, and he stood up too. I bowed politely over Jen's hand. Her fingers were cool, damp. I got the impression that her flawless skin should have been prune-wrinkled, but it wasn't. I had to fight an urge to kiss the back of her hand and taste her cool flesh. I managed to keep the neutral tone to my voice and said, "Good evening." The she-lady smiled at me, showing her green teeth again, and said, "Something of a gentleman." I wouldn't have expected it. She withdrew her hand and said, "And tall." Her eyes roamed over me in idle speculation. I like tall men. I felt my cheeks flush and grow warmer. Other parts suffered from similar inflammation. Mav asked, "Is she lovely enough to suit you, wizard? You have no idea how many mortal men have longed for her, and how few have known her embrace." Jen let out a quiet laugh. "Far more than about 3 minutes, at any rate." Mav drew Jen down until the nearly nude she-lady knelt beside the throne. Mav toyed with a strand of her curling leaf-green hair with one hand. "Why not agree to my offer, wizard? Spend the night in the company of my maiden. Is it not a pleasant price?" My voice came out more quietly than I'd intended. "You want me to get a child on her? A child you would keep?" Mav's eyes glittered. She leaned toward me and said very quietly, "Do not let that concern you. I can feel your hunger, mortal man. The need's in you, hot as a fever. Let go for a time. No mortal can sate you as she will." I felt my eyes draw to the she-woman. trailing down the length of pale flesh left bared between the idle drapes of emerald silk. Following the length of her legs, that hunger rose again in me, a raw and unthinking need. Scent flooded over me, a perfume of wind and mist, of heated flesh. Scent evoked more phantom sensations of the silken caress of delicate fey hands. Sweetly hot rake of nails. Winding strength of limbs tangled with mine. Mav's eyes brightened. Perhaps she is not enough for you. Perhaps you would wish another? Even myself? As I watched, Jen leaned her cheek against Mav's thigh and placed a soft kiss upon the tight leather. Mav shifted, a slow, sensual motion of her hips and back, and murmured, or more. If your thirst runs deep enough, drive a hard bargain, wizard. All of us would enjoy that. The longing, an aching force of naked need redoubled. The two fairies were lovely, more than lovely. Sinuous, willing, perfectly unrestrained, perfectly passionate. I could feel that in them, radiating from them. If I made the bargain, they would make the evening one of nothing but indulgence, sensation, delight. Mav and her handmaiden would do things to me that you can only read about in the magazines. Dear Penthouse, I murmured, I never thought something like this would happen to me. Wizard, Mav murmured, I see you weighing the consequences in your eyes. You think too much. It weakens you. Stop thinking. Come down into the earth with us. Some mathematical and uncaring part of my brain, way the hell in the back of my head, reminded me that I did need that information. A simple statement from Mav would tell me if she was the killer or not. Go ahead, it told me. It isn't as though I'm going to be painful for you to pay her price. Don't you deserve to have something pleasant happen to you for a change? Make the bargain. Get the information. Get wasted on kisses and pleasure and soft skin. Live a little. Before that borrowed time you're on runs out. I reached out with a shaking hand to the crystal ewer on the table. I clenched it. It clinked and rattled against the glass as I poured cool, sparkling water into it. Mav's eyes grew sharper. Harry, Billy said, his voice uncertain, didn't you just say something bad about, taking food or drink from, these people? I put the pitcher down and picked up the glass of water. Jen rubbed her cheek against Mav's thigh and murmured, They never really change, do they? No, Mav said. The males all fall for the same thing. Isn't it delicious? I unbuttoned the fly on my jeans, undid the zipper a little, and dumped the cold water directly on my pants. Some shocks of sensation are pleasant. This one wasn't. The water was so cold that the tiny chips of ice that had formed in it, as though it was trying to freeze itself from the inside out. That cold went right down where I had intended it to go, and everything in my jeans tried to contract into my abdomen in sheer hypothermic horror. As I let out a little yelp, and my skin promptly clawed with goose flesh. Lay down. The gesture had its intended effect. The overwhelming, almost feral hunger withered and vanished. I was able to take my eyes off the Winter Lady and her handmaiden, to clear my thoughts into something resembling a sane line of reason. I shook my head a bit to be sure, and then looked up at Mav. Anger surged through me, and my jaw clenched tight. But I made an effort to keep my words at least marginally polite. Sorry, sweetie, but I have a couple of problems with that offer. Mav's lips tightened. And those would be? 1. I'm not handing over a child to you. Not mine. Not anyone's. Not now, and not ever. If you had a brain in your head, you'd have known that part. Mav's already pale face blanched even more, and she sat bolt upright on her throne. "You dare shut up!" I snarled, and it came out loud enough to ring off the walls of the ballroom. "I'm not finished." Mav jerked as though I'd slapped her. Her mouth dropped open, and she blinked at me. "I came here under your invitation and protection. I am your guest. But in spite of that, you've thrown glamour at me anyway." I stood up, my hands spread on the table, leaning toward her for emphasis. "I don't have time for this crap. You don't scare me, lady," I said. "I only came here for answers, but if you keep pushing me, I'm going to have to push back. Hard." Mav's evident anger evaporated. She leaned back on her throne, lips pursed, her expression placid and enigmatic. Well, well, well. Not so easily captured, it would seem. A new voice, a relaxed, masculine drawl, slid into silence. "I told you, Mav. You should have been polite. Anyone who declares war on the Red Court isn't going to be the sort to take kindly to pressure." The speaker stepped into the ballroom through the double doors and walked casually to the banquet tables and toward Mav's throne. It was a man, maybe in his early 30s, medium build, maybe half an inch shy of 6 feet tall. He wore dark jeans, a white t-shirt, and a leather jacket. Droplets of dark reddish brown stained the shirt on one side of his face. His scalp was bald but for the stubble of dark hair. As he approached, I picked out more details. He had a brand on his throat. A snowflake made of white scar tissue stood out sharply against his skin. The skin on one side of his face was red and a little swollen, and he was missing half of the eyebrow and the crescent of stubble on his scalp on that side. He'd been burned, and recently. He reached the throne and dropped to one knee before it, somehow conveying a certain relaxed insolence with gesture, and extended a box to Mav. "Is it done?" Mav asked, an almost childlike eagerness in her voice. "What took you so long?" "It wasn't as easy as you said it would be, but I did it." The Winter Lady all but snatched the carved box from his hands, Arvius lighting her eyes. "Wizard, this is my knight, Lloyd, of the family Slate." Slate nodded to me. "How are you?" "Impatient," I responded, but I nodded back to him warily. "You're the Winter Knight?" "So far, yeah. I guess you're the Winter Emissary, asking questions and investigating, and so on?" "Yup." "Did you kill Ronald Raoul?" Slate burst out laughing. "Christ, Dresden, you don't waste time, do you?" "I filled my inserene courtesy quota for the day," I said. "Did you kill him?" Slate shrugged and said, "No. To be honest with you, I'm not sure I could have killed him. He's been at this a lot longer than me." "He was an old man," I said. "So are a lot of wizards," Slate pointed out. "I could have bench-pressed him, sure. Killing him is something else altogether." Mav let out a sudden hiss of anger, the sound eerily loud. She lifted her foot and kicked Slate in the shoulder. Something popped when she did, and the force of the kick drove the Winter Knight down a tier, into the table and the she seated there. The table toppled and the she, chairs, and knight went sprawling. Mav rose to her feet, sending the green-toothed Jen scooting away from her. She drew what looked like a military-issue combat knife from the carved box. It was crusted with some kind of black, gelatinous substance, like burned barbecue sauce. "You stupid animal," she snarled. "Useless. This is useless to me." She hurled the knife at Slate. The handle hit him in the biceps as his left arm just as he sat up again. His face twisted in sudden fury. He took up the knife, rose to his feet, and stalked toward Mav with murder in his eye. Mav drew herself up, her face shining with sudden terrible beauty. She lifted her right hand, ring finger and thumb both bent, and murmured something into a liquid alien tongue. Sudden blue light gathered around her fingers, and the temperature in the room dropped about 40 degrees. She spoke again and flicked her wrist, sending glowing motes of azure flicking toward Slate. The snowflake brand flared into sudden light, and Slate's advance halted, his body going rigid. The skin around the brand turned blue, then purple, then black, spreading like a stop-motion enhanced film of gangrene. A quiet snarl slipped from Slate's lips, and I could see his body trembling with the effort to continue toward Mav. He shuddered and took another step forward. Mav lifted her other hand, her index finger extended while the others curled, and a sudden wind whipped past me, cold enough that it stole the breath from my lungs. The wind whipped madly around Slate, making his leather coat flap. Bits of white frost started forming on his eyelashes and eyebrows. His expression, now anguish as well as full of rage, faltered, and his advance halted again. "Calm him," Mav murmured. Jen slipped behind Slate, wrapping her arms around his neck, leaning her mouth down close to his ears. Slate's eyes flickered with hot, violent hate for a moment, and then began to grow heavier. Jan ran her head slowly down the sleeve of his jacket, fingers caressing his wrist. His arm lowered as I watched. A moment later, Jen slid the jacket from his shoulders. The t-shirt was sleeveless, and Slate's arms were hard with muscle and tracked with needle marks. Jen held out a hand, and another darting pixie handed her the hypodermic needle. Jen slipped it into the bend of his arm, still whispering to him, sliding the plunger slowly down. Slate's eyes rolled back in his head, and he sank to his knees. Jen went down with him, wrapped around him like kelp in a swimmer, her mouth next to his ear. Mav lowered his hands, and the wind and the cold died away. She lifted a shaking hand to her face and stepped back to the throne, settling stiffly onto it. Narrowed eyes looked at Slate's increasing malleable form. Her cheekbones stood out more sharply than before. Her eyes looked more sunken. She gripped the arms of the throne and her fingers twitched. "What the hell was that?" Billy whispered. "Probably for what passes for polite disagreement," I muttered. "Get up. We're leaving." I stood up. Mav's eyes darted to me. Her voice came out dry, harsh. "Our bargain is not complete, wizard." "The talk is. But I have not answered your question." "Keep your answer. I don't need it anymore." "You don't?" Mav asked. "We don't?" Billy asked. I nodded toward Slate and Jen. "You had to push yourself to make him stand still. Look at you. You're just about out of gas right now from going up against your own knight." I started down the tiers, Billy coming with me. "Besides that, you're sloppy, sweetheart. Reckless. A clean killing like Raoul's takes a plan, and that isn't you." I could feel her eyes pressing against my back like frozen thorns. I ignored her. "I did not give you leave to go, wizard," she said, her voice chilly. "I didn't ask." "I won't forget this insolence." "I probably will," I said. "It's nothing special. Come on, Billy." I walked to the double doors and out. As soon as we were both outside, the doors swung shut with a huge hollow boom that made me jump. Darkness fell, sudden and complete, and I fumbled for my amulet as my heart lurched in panic. The spectral light from my amulet showed me Billy's stained face first, and then the area immediately around us. The doubled doors were gone. Only a blank stone wall remained where they had been. "Gulp," Billy said. He shook his head for a moment, dazed. Where did they go? I rested my fingers against the stone wall, reaching out for it with a wizard's sense. Nothing. It was rock, not illusion. Beats the hell out of me. The doors here must have been away to some other location. Like some kind of teleport? More like a temporary entrance into the Never Never, I said. Or a shortcut through the Never Never to another place on Earth. Kind of intense in there. When she made it get all cold, I've never seen anything like that before. Sloppy, I said. She was laying a binding on Slate. Her power was sloshing over into changing the temperature. A child could have done better. Billy let out a short, quiet laugh. After what we just saw, anyone else would still be shaking. You're giving her a rating from a Russian judge. So sue me, I shrugged. She's strong. Strong isn't everything. Billy glanced up at me. Could you do what she did? I'd probably have used fire. His eyebrows went up, his expression impressed. Do you really think Mav's not the killer? I do, I said. This murder is clean enough to look like an accident. Mav's obviously got impulse control issues. Doesn't make much for a methodical murderer. What about Slate? I shook my head, my brow tightening. Not sure about him. He's mortal. There's nothing that says he couldn't lie to us. But I got what I was looking for, and I found out a couple of things on top of that. So why are you frowning? Because all I got was more questions. Everyone's been telling me to hurry. Fairies don't do that. They're practically immortal, and they're not in a rush. But Mab and Grimmelkin both have tried to rush me now. Mav went for the high-pressure sales tactic, too. Like she didn't have time for anything more subtle. Why would they do that? I sighed. Something's in motion. If I don't run down the killer, the courts go to war with one another. That would explain the whole World War II dress motif back there. Yeah, but not why time would be so pressing. I shook my head. If we could have stayed longer, I might have been able to work out more, but it was getting too nervous in there. Discretion? Valor? Billy said, the way of agreement. We leave now, right? Eldie? I asked. I felt a stirring in my hair, and then the tiny pixie popped out to hover in the air in front of me. Can you lead us back to my car? The pixie flashed in the affirmative and zipped away. I lifted my amulet and followed. Billy and I didn't speak until our guide had led us out of the underground complex not far from where I'd parked the Blue Beetle. We cut through an alley. About halfway down, Billy grabbed my arm and jerked me boldly behind him, snapping, "Harry, get back!" In the same motion, he swung out one foot and kicked the metal trash can. It went flying, crashing into something I hadn't seen behind it. Someone let out a short, harsh gasp of pain. Billy stepped forward and picked up the metal lid that had fallen to the ground. He swung it down at the shape. It struck with a noisy clash. I took a couple of steps back to make sure I was clear of action and reached for my amulet again. "Billy," I said, "what the hell?" I felt the sudden presence at my back half, a second too late to get out of the way. A hand the size of a dinner plate closed on the back of my neck like a vice and lifted. I felt my heels rise until my toes were just barely touching the ground. A voice, a feminine control, growled, "Let go of the amulet and call him off, wizard. Call him off before I break your neck." Thank you for listening to the Dresden Files, Summer Night, Chapter 15. Please do stay tuned for Chapter 16. Thank you very much. Also, I wanted to let you know we're almost at 100 subscribers. If we keep going, keep pushing, we can make this channel grow to a large channel. Be able to get more books like this, be able to do this more at a full-time status. Again, I do want to thank you very much for everything that you guys are doing and watching my videos, supporting me. Thank you very much, you all, and you have a great day.